Please be aware, in this podcast series we talk about all areas of safeguarding, which some people may find upsetting. So please make sure you're okay listening to today's topic. Be mindful of those around you, such as children, that you might not want to listen in. Hi, I'm SSS Safeguarding Director Sam Preston.
And I'm former head teacher and content author Sara Spinks.
Today we're talking about sexual harassment in the workplace, something that sadly is not new, but in the UK from this month at the time of recording, which is October 2024, in the UK we have new legislation.
So Sam, can I just ask you, what is the need for the new legislation? You know, what's prompted this change?
Yeah, well, I mean, we did have existing legislation, but I think it's a kind of combination. We've all seen there's been several very high profile cases where this type of misconduct has occurred, and it's, on an ongoing basis it's occurred, and it's really highlighted kind of institutional failures where there's been a failure to take action. So I think that, coupled together with the most recent research, which suggests, and this is likely to be an underrepresentation, it suggests that in the UK, 40% of women and 18% of men have experienced some form of unwanted sexual behaviour in the workplace. And that can range from things like unwelcome jokes or comments of a sexual nature to serious sexual assault.
Yeah, so the UK's new sexual harassment law is effective from October. I think it's 26, it becomes available. So how will it strengthen, do you think, the protections for workers and sort of create a fairer workplace environment?
Well, the new law, it not only expands the previous legislative requirements, but it introduces new measures in sort of key focus areas. So that includes an expanded definition of harassment, so a broader range of behaviours. And that includes things like unwanted touching, kissing, making sexual advances, any physical contact that's unwanted or unwelcome, even if that's not violent or aggressive, making offensive or unwelcome comments of a sexual nature. So that's comments that are sexually suggestive or derogatory or humiliating. Also displaying and distributing sexually suggestive images or material. So this covers any images or materials that are sexually suggestive or offensive, even if they're not explicit. So that's new. And engaging in other forms of conduct of a sexual nature that is unwelcome or offensive. So again, it's behaviours like sexually suggestive, kind of derogatory or humiliating things, say like making offensive jokes or gestures, things like that.
Yeah, so am I right in thinking the new law also specifies that harassment can be a single incident or a series of incidents?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. And it can occur not just in person. I think it also includes like by phone or by email or through social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, as the world is evolving, that's become more and more important. And I think it's really good that it actually specifically identifies those mediums. So having the broader definition of harassment is intended to provide that better protection for workers and also make it easier for victims to come forward and report harassment.
So what about employers' liability? Will they be held liable for harassment committed by their employees, or even if they're unaware of that behaviour?
Yeah, absolutely. The employers, they can be held responsible for the actions of their employees, even if they've taken reasonable steps to prevent harassment.
Wow, so this is definitely increased accountability for employers, and I suppose it's intended to incentivise them to sort of take more proactive steps really to prevent harassment and maybe create that sort of safer workplace environment. So what format will that accountability take?
Well, there's 4 key areas. The first is increased penalties. So there are existing penalties, but now the fines for employers who fail to take reasonable steps to prevent harassment, and that's been increased. So employers found to be in violation of the law, they can now face fines of up to £500,000. So that's a significant increase from the previous maximum fine, which was, I think it was 20,000. There's also unlimited fines for serious breaches. So in cases where there's serious breaches of the law, employers could actually face unlimited fines. So that means there's actually no cap on the amount of money that an employer could be fined in those cases. There's also another key area is protection for third parties. So the law now protects not only employees, but also third parties. So customers, contractors, visitors. So, in school setting, visitors to the site, they would be within that accountability and responsibility. And there's also strengthened reporting procedures. Employers must have clear policies in place for reporting harassment, and they must investigate those complaints promptly and fairly.
So I suppose in summary, the new sexual harassment law is expected to have a positive impact by reducing that tolerance of harassment, improving that workplace culture, I suppose, and increasing that confidence amongst victims, I would have thought.
Yeah, that's right. And as we've discussed, it will hold employers accountable. So all employers will need to review their policies and procedures to ensure that they comply with the latest requirements. I know you've been looking at this, so maybe it would be good for listeners, Sarah, if you could just run through, give a summary of the kind of essential components of a sexual harassment policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, a comprehensive sexual harassment policy should clearly outline the employer's commitment, and it should include a really clear definition of sexual harassment, with examples to illustrate specific behaviours that constitute harassment. And it should also state prohibited conduct. So that's that explicit list of the types of prohibited content.
So when you say that prohibited conduct, we're talking about unwanted physical contact, sexual advances, offensive or derogatory comments, displaying or distributing that sexually suggestive material, and also that retaliation against individuals who report harassment.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Right. All those. Yeah. And the policy should also state what the reporting procedures are. So outlining those sort of multiple channels for reporting harassment, including senior leaders, direct line managers or supervisors, HR representatives, and I would state it would be useful in schools to have that a designated contact person that's named within your policy. It should also be clear about that confidentiality, the investigation process. So for schools, again, really clear link to your staff discipline, conduct and grievance policy. The sort of prevention and training. How are you going to prevent it? What training are you going to put in place? Yeah. Those clear disciplinary actions and consequences that come in there. And potential disciplinary actions for violating the policy. That needs to be clearly in your sexual harassment policy. And can I just say, for those using the SSS Learning Suite, I have put a sample policy in the library, as well as an updated staff code of conduct policy as well that includes sexual harassment now.
And focusing on prevention, staff also have a responsibility to help prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. And we've actually got a training course currently in production to explain all the areas that we've discussed today. And also it outlines the measures that staff can take.
And I think what's also important is to really sort of affect the cultural change in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we focus quite a bit on things from the employer's point of view, but I guess if we're kind of leaving a sort of final kind of measure for everybody to take on board, everyone has the right to a safe and respectful workplace. And by being aware and being respectful and proactive, all staff, they can help prevent sexual harassment. And I think that's really important if we are going to create that positive work environment for all.